think it's time, hey boys, I think it's time to start my After the Collapse series. And this is, I'm not sure I'm really happy with that name, because this has got nothing to do with zombies and all that sort of thing. This is just, I just want this to be a practical approach to being prepared for whatever might happen. There are all kinds of disasters, whether it's hurricanes that we've seen in, down south frequently, and recently some devastating ones. It could be, major ice storms like happened 14 years ago in Montreal, Quebec area, in Quebec province, where people died, animals died, the power was out for weeks. And I want this to have as much possible useful information in it that can be used at any time. It doesn't necessarily have to be, in some major problem. It could be something that you might do even on an extended camping or hunting trip. There's a lot of people out there who know more about this than I do, I'm sure. Don't take any offense to the suggestions I make. They are suggestions. I've got a lot of years of experience doing this, and for what works and what doesn't, so I'm hopefully just going to pass some of that along to anybody out there who's interested in watching. Start off this discussion. It's a system that I've been working on that helps take out the equation of where you live. For example, I live in an area where there's a lot of water. It's not the cleanest water, it's a lot of marshy water, but it's there, it can be filtered. There's certainly an abundance of trees and so on, so I have lots of firewood and cover and materials to build with. But there's a lot of places where people are, where there's near desert conditions, where they don't have those things. So I've tried to come up with a system where I can suggest different parts of your kit that will sort of be, cover that difference between the two terrains. It's also a weight factor. Age and the physical condition can make a huge difference as to how much you can do and what type of thing you need. And the terrain, you could be fairly flat, which is what it's like here. It could be very mountainous, and then that would make a huge difference as well. Can play a big role in this is the climate. Do you live in an area where it's extremely hot, or in an area where I am where it can be hot during the summer but extremely cold and rough during the winter? So that's something that has to be taken into consideration. Big difference is conveyance. Are you going to be able to travel with a vehicle such as like a pickup truck? Can you take a boat or a snowmobile? What's your ability to carry heavy weights mechanically for at least some distance? And then that brings up another factor in terms of stealth. If there is a terrible situation, the vast majority of people, I'm sure not one person in thousands is even beginning to be prepared. So as soon as you have something that's necessary, even though you've spent all your hard-earned money and all your effort to make sure that you had that, somebody else is certainly going to want to try and take it from you when they get desperate enough. Okay, so what I've done is listed a series of categories, and then in each category will be a number of different items, that would be appropriate for that category. And each of those items, or each group, will get 1 point, for example. I think what this will do is help us gauge where we stand when we're doing this. So many points, and you really got it covered, and less points than that. So we'll go through all this and explain it as we go along. The reason I want to do it this way is that I've been watching these videos for quite some time, and each person gives some pretty good information about what they're thinking of and Some of it's better information than others, but it doesn't take into account all the different places in the world that we might live. There are so many different climates, so many different terrain features, so many different temperatures. The conditions vary incredibly around the world. If you live in a very mountainous area where you're traveling up very high altitudes and steep inclines, there's only so much you can carry and so much you can do. If you're in a very, very dry, almost desert-like area, water will be an extreme priority. Whereas where I am, water is everywhere. It's not the cleanest, so you have to be able to boil it, filter it, and whatever. But it's in abundance. There are places where the temperatures are 100 degrees all the time. Other places where the temperatures might be below zero. Places like where I live, where it can be either way, depending on the season. So we need to try to come up with a system where you can plug in appropriate items for your own area that will help you sort of figure out your score here. So let's start off, and I've put these categories that we're going to talk about more or less in a priority that would make sense for my area. You don't lose any points for rearranging the priorities. That has nothing to do with it, because I realize, again, because of the differences of where we live. Okay, so I'm going to start off my categories with fire. There will be a number of different items in that category, of which you need to have a minimum, and I'll tell you what the minimum is. I might have 10 items listed, but you may really only need a minimum of 3 in order to score your good points. Anything beyond that won't get you extra points, but it just gives you more options and more security, I suppose. So starting with fire, I chose fire because it, I think, represents just about every other category. For example, if you have fire, you have warmth. You can dry your clothes. You can purify your water. You can cook your meals. I think a really big thing of it is also that you will have. There's a certain feeling that fire gives us of security, of safety. That may or may not actually be true in a sense, but it certainly gives us that comfortable feeling. And I think keeping your morale up in a difficult situation is paramount, almost beyond anything else. So we're going to go with fire. So the items that I would suggest we have would be, personally, I would think ferro rod is number one. I think that it doesn't matter if it's freezing cold, soaking wet, no matter what happens, as long as you have it, you're going to probably be able to get your fire going, and you should be able to if you've practiced at all with it. And you can strike it with a striker if you have one, with the back of your knife, with the blade of your knife if you're desperate, although I certainly don't recommend that. You can strike it with a piece of quartz. You can strike it with a piece of broken glass. I mean, a ferro rod is pretty reliable. So that would be my number one thing. I always like to have at least 2 different types of fire starting material or techniques. One would be a spark, which would be ferro rod, flint and steel if you're into that. There is no flint anywhere around where I live, so I suppose I could buy it online somewhere, but I don't have any flint. The second technique I like is to have something that has an actual flame, because some things just are not going to start very easily with a spark, whereas other things will start very readily with a spark. A flame will take care of the items that might not really want to strike just from a ferro rod. If you've got one of each of those, then you pretty much have the bases covered. As far as lighters go, I know a lot of people carry Bic lighters. I actually carry one too sometimes myself. You're better off with the Zippo type lighter that you put the fuel in. The butane in a Bic lighter won't operate at low temperatures. It just doesn't expand enough to come out and ignite. So they are less reliable than the old style, just flint and whatever that fuel is that you pour into them. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's not butane anyways. So a Zippo lighter would be my second choice. You can carry matches. I'm not a huge fan of matches. It's just too easy to strike one and have it blow out or whatever. You may use several matches each time you try to start a fire, depending on the circumstances and the conditions. That just means that you'd have to have an awful pile of matches to keep you going. Now, again, partly depending on where you live, but almost anywhere, a magnifying glass. The disadvantage to a magnifying glass is, of course, that they don't work on severely overcast days. They also don't work at night, so you're limited to when you can use one. But when you do have a sunny day, you don't wear it out. It's the same magnifying glass for the next 100 years, as long as you don't lose it. It works off the sun, of course, as we know. Therefore, there's no fuel that will ever run out. There's really nothing that's ever going to cause that to fail, other than the weather conditions. So that's another thing. I guess, whatever you're going to carry in terms of starting your fire, you should always make sure that you carry some tinder with you. It doesn't have to be a ton, but you should always have some tinder. In my case, it's primarily birch bark, fat wood, things like that. Keep it in a waterproof container. Even though, as we've seen in a recent video, birch will burn even when it's soaking wet, firewood pretty much the same. It never fails that, it just, when you're in a desperate situation, and maybe you've been dumped in the cold water, or maybe it's just plain cold and windy and you're half frozen, you lose the feeling in your fingers, you desperately need to get warm right away, and fussing around with something that's marginal is that's not the time to do that. The time to get a fire going right now when you need it is to have dry tinder. So I've allowed 3 points for that. You can add any other different things, like each person, you're going to know in your area, and you should learn in your area, what are the best things that will work in terms of starting fire. For me, it's birch bark. For you, you may not have birch trees anywhere, but you may have something else that's equally good. So learn the resources in your area, practice with them so that you can use them even under harsh conditions when you're distracted by cold and rain and snow and whatever the case may be. You need to have this developed to a motor memory where you can just basically do it almost without thinking about it. So 3 points. Now, like I said, if you've got 10 different things listed here, you don't get 10 points. You just maximum of 3. You should have a minimum of 3 as well, but the maximum is 3. And if you've got 8, that's better. You just don't score another point for it. And what we'll do is at the end we'll sort of tally up our points and see where we go with it. So that will do it for fire. And we'll carry on with the next one, which I think in the next situation would probably be cover. So let's go on with that one. No, don't drink my coffee. Okay, so for cover, and one of the reasons I put this in second place is brings us back to the inclement weather, cold conditions, whatever the situation might be, or even in a desert area, just too much sunshine, you can dehydrate, get burned, and whatever because of that. So for cover, we're going to, first and foremost, as far as cover goes, before you even think of packing anything in your bag, when you walk out the door, you should be dressed appropriately for the conditions at your time of year, where you're going, and those conditions can vary. I can go out at 10 o'clock in the morning and the sun might be shining and it might be comparatively warm, and it might be above freezing, and it could be a pretty decent day, sun shining, and by the time I get back that evening, or if I get detained overnight, the temperature can go well down below 0. So first and foremost, dress properly. If it's one of those situations where the temperature can vary quite a bit during the day, be sure to have something extra in your pack, in your day pack, not your other pack, for an extra sweater or a vest or something that you can put on over or under this, whatever you're wearing, to compensate for those changes in daily temperature. So we've done that. Secondly, I would suggest probably a tarp. A tarp is something that you can rig it up pretty quickly between a couple of trees as a windbreak. You can set it up also as a cover for rain or snow. And if all else fails and there's just really not much else you can do, you can just wrap up in it. And at least you've got a windbreak, and because it's a plastic, it's a sort of a thermal barrier to a point. It's not insulation, but it's vapor barrier, so it will help retain your body heat. Perhaps if there's a fire in front of you, you can have that fire come in and it will just enclose that little micro bubble of extra warmth. It's not a tremendous amount of extra warmth, but it could keep you alive. So that's a major one. I'll tell you something, and another thing too, I want to tell you about this too. They talk about, and I take this with a grain of salt myself, but they talk about how you can go 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and so on, and 3 minutes without oxygen, and so on. I would really suggest you take that with a grain of salt. You may go without water in a dry, arid condition for 3 days, and you might be clinging to life, but you're absolutely not going to be in serviceable condition. You're not going to be in a condition where you can help yourself, where you can do anything, where you can think clearly. The same with food. You might technically be alive at the end of 3 weeks, but by the time you've gone 5 days or so without food, your body is changing. It's shifting to starvation mode. It's reducing the amount of energy it sends to certain parts of your body. And you can again start having problems with, you're not thinking clearly, you're not thinking straight. That's not going to allow you a very good opportunity to better your situation. So hypothermia, on the other hand, can kill you in hours. So I would absolutely put hypothermia at the top of the list. They're all critically important, but if you get soaked in the cold water, or snow, or go through the ice, or whatever the case may be, and you can't get dried off and get a fire going, get warmed up, get dry clothes on, or whatever the case is, you're in very, very serious trouble. So keep that one in mind. Now, again, this is where it comes to the situation where somebody who lives in a hot, arid area probably isn't going to have to be too concerned about hypothermia. So this is where you need to make those adjustments. So we've covered that. I think the other thing too, and I think this really applies to anywhere in the world, is a bug net, or a bug hat, or a bug jacket, or just a whole net, or whatever. There's not very many places in the world that I've heard of that don't have some kind of biting insect that, if it's not outright dangerous, at the very least, it can be annoying and demoralizing. So by all means, some kind of a bug net, bug protection. You could use bug dope, but a bug net's probably better, and you don't use it up. As long as you take care of it, you've still got it. So we'll put that down for cover. We'll also make that 3 points. And again, make personal adjustments to some of these suggestions based on where you're living and the type of climate and the type of terrain that you're living with, because again, it's there's such a variety all over the world. So this is just a guideline for you to set up your own list, really, is what we're trying to do here. So next on our list will be actually water. So let's carry on with that one. So with water, it's fairly similar to what probably most of the other ones, other videos have said. You need a source for water, of course. So if it's not quite apparent, then you need to invest some energy into finding a water source. You should always have a supply of water with you, at least some, if at all possible, to carry you through a fairly brief, hopefully, period of time that it might take you to find that water source. So I guess first and foremost on this list would be a pot and some kind of a canteen or something that you can carry water in. And I think it's very important to have both. You need the pot to boil quantities of water, and then you need to be able to carry that water with you so that you don't have to stop and light a fire and boil water or do whatever you have to do each and every time you need a drink, especially if you're in a hot area where you live. So a pot and a canteen is critical. And then I think other than that, I think I also do carry a water filter. I very rarely ever use it. I have a Sawyer Mini, the one that I've got now. In fact, I've never used, but I have it with me. Water here is abundant, so as I've said, so I don't have to worry about finding water, but I do need to be able to purify it and be able to drink it safely. Cryptosporidium and Giardia and all sorts of other little nasties that live in water probably aren't lethal, although I guess in severe cases they could be. But they'll sure make you sick, and that's the last thing in the world that you need when you're already out in a desperate situation. So let's have some form of purification for water, in addition to boiling it, which is the best way as far as I'm concerned. If I was drinking water out of a sort of a murky, marshy sort of a pond or something, first thing I would do would be to filter it to get the particulate matter out of it. Even if I had to filter it through a couple of layers of clean socks or t-shirts or whatever the case was, to get it as clean as I could, and then I would boil it. And if you really want to make certain, take some charcoal from your fire and put it in the pot of water that you're boiling. Charcoal is a great purifier, helps sort of sweeten the water, not like sugar, but helps clean the water a lot, and it takes out a lot of things that will cause the water to taste off flavored, so, or bad flavor, whatever. So that's another thing. And if the water's really questionable, I would take a couple of lumps of charcoal out of my fire. They don't have to be hot or anything, just charcoal. Put it in the water, boil that in there, and that will make pretty decent drinkable water, certainly from a safety point of view. And when you're in a desperate situation, even if it tastes sulfury or whatever the case may be, as long as it's safe to drink, you're going to drink it. So another thing that I would suggest is any other way you can think of to purify water. For example, in my medical kit, I have a bottle of iodine, which is great for cuts and wounds and so on. It also, a few drops of iodine will help very much to purify water fairly well in the absence of any other options. Same with a small vial or a bottle that might put a few ounces of bleach in it. It only takes a few drops, literally from an eyedropper, to purify maybe a liter of water or something. Now, I personally don't want to use those particular methods if I can help it, but when you're desperate, again, you do what you have to do. There are any number of different things that you can use for water as far as purification and having it. I gave 3 points to that. There's probably a dozen different things you could think of, but if you've got at least 3 of them, then give yourself 3 more points. Let's go into some kind of a way of getting what they call a sleep system now. We used to call them a sleeping bag or a bedroll when I was a kid. Okay, first off, for our sleep system, I think I'm going to start off with what you're going to wear when you go to sleep. More important almost than what you're going to sleep in. I think it's critical, and I know from living in very, very cold climates, you need a complete, separate set of clothing of some form that you're going to sleep in. You're not going to get a decent sleep if you're in damp clothes because you've been walking through damp, rainy weather, snowy weather, sweating. If you're even in a hot climate where you're perspiring and so on, you're not going to get a proper night's sleep if you're in clammy, uncomfortable clothing. If you take that clothing off and sleep without it, you may not have a sufficient amount of insulation to keep you warm, depending on, again, your climate. If you don't get a good night's sleep deprivation, again, something like hypothermia isn't the kind of thing that everybody thinks about immediately. Everybody thinks about, what knife can I have? What kind of firearm can I be having with me? All these types of sort of macho sort of things. If you have sleep deprivation, it doesn't really matter what you're carrying. That again, it won't take very long. A few nights without proper sleep, you're not thinking straight, your energy level is low, you're making mistakes, you're missing opportunities, possibly even injuring yourself because of not being focused. So let's focus on being aware of these things every bit as much, if not more so, than some of the other options that most people think of first and foremost. So in addition to a clean set of clothing to put on in the evening so that you can freshen up If you have the opportunity and if the weather is fine, you know, get yourself a little sponge bath or whatever. Get a good night's sleep. Part of that is going to, in addition to the clothing, is going to be having a place that's as comfortable as you can get to have that sleep. So if you can have if it's possible to be carrying a decent sleeping bag with a nice padded underpad or something, that's great. Layers, again back in my area because that's what I'm familiar with, layers of spruce boughs that will get me up off the cold damp ground. That's insulation. Also gives me a springiness, a mattress type thing that's going to be a softer way to lie down on, and of course a sleeping bag as well if I have it. Something, my tarp that we've already mentioned, something over me so that it breaks the wind and you know, maybe allows me to get a good night's sleep. The bug net, this is why I was thinking of a bug net more so than just a head net or something. Drape the bug net around in such a way that, you know, that you're going to get a good night's sleep without the bugs driving you mad and you're not going to be able to rest properly. So concentrate on having that system in place, whatever is appropriate for where you are. Something that will keep you either out of the sun or out of the rain or the snow or whatever, give you some kind of shelter, and then you're set to go and get a good night's sleep. And if you have clean water to drink and a good night's sleep, you know, and all these other things in place, you know, you're in good order as far as having the energy to provide the other items for yourself. You know, having the fire takes a lot of energy for collecting the firewood and so on. You know, you need to have a good night's sleep and all the other items areas in place in order to have the energy to do that. So for the sleep system, again, another 3 points. In that particular case, you really need all 3 of those items, but hopefully you'll have a couple of them at least. So give yourself 1 point for each of those items, or a proper substitute if there is something specifically different in your vicinity. But something similar to that, you know, really needs to be in place. Okay, so we've got the real critical things that are sort of really all focus about keeping your body core temperature under control. If you get too hot or too cold, your body just doesn't really like that kind of thing. Let's go on now to some of the items that may be secondary in some senses, but that will certainly go a long way to helping you achieve those first few items. So let's go on with cordage this time. Hey buddy, you gonna help me? You gonna tell them what's on here? That's a good boy. Well, I know you're gonna help out, aren't you? Okay, so for cordage, fairly straightforward. I think that I would suggest 2 styles of cordage, whatever they might be. It's, you know, kind of a personal preference. I would recommend having at least 1 heavier rope type cordage, something maybe 3/8 or more of an inch in diameter, something strong enough to support your weight, so that if for some reason, and if you live in a flat desert area that may not apply, but if for some reason you needed to climb up or climb down an incline, or whatever the case may be, where you needed some heavy duty strong rope, I keep basically clothesline rope type thing, and also there's a braided, it's not really nylon, but 50 feet of rope doesn't take up much space. It comes coiled from the store. Don't uncoil it, it's easier. Just makes a little round thing about 2 inches in diameter and maybe 10 or 12 inches long. You get 50 feet of it. It's always handy to have some very, very strong rope, just because. As far as regular just cordage goes, I think that you should have something. Now, a lot of people like paracord. Bank line is another one that seems to be very popular. These 2 things are very good. There's nothing wrong with them. They're a little pricey, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they're not terribly expensive, but they are a bit pricey. What I like to use, which is quite strong, it's very weather resistant, and it's very compact, is the rope or the line that they use as a duck decoy line for the anchors, and it's a braided line. It's quite strong. It's obviously water and weather resistant because they tie it to the anchor weights and then to the decoy with so many feet of line, and that holds the decoys in place when they're out, hunting. And it's quite compact. It's fairly thin for its strength. So I carry that. It's relatively inexpensive. I think I got 200 or 250 feet here in Canada for about 11 bucks, and things here in Canada are fairly pricey. So that works really, really well. But whatever way you want to go, as long as you've got something of a decent quality, in addition to your heavier piece of rope. Also, I would suggest having some kind of cheap string. Now, this is less critical because you can use your other rope or cordage for any purpose, but you're using up a more valuable resource for a minimal job, let's say. So whether it's just a bit of cotton, that white cotton line, or some jute string or whatever, jute's really good. It's relatively strong. It's not something I would use to build a shelter with if I had a choice. But it has the added advantage of you can fray it all up and unravel it, and it makes a pretty good fire starter as well. What we're doing is making your list of items that you want to have in your bug out bag, and so then you'll have a checklist. So again, 3 points. So let's jump into the fire right off the bat. This is a pretty controversial type of topic, cutting tools and knives and so on. So first and foremost, let's get it right off the top. I want to see everybody out there, certainly for myself anyways, with a fixed blade, full tang knife of some description, probably with at least a 4.5 to 5 inch blade, I would suggest. If you feel comfortable with a little bit bigger knife, that's fine too. I think that something like that is a very, very important. There's not much you can't do. The very features that make one knife excellent for one job make the very same knife terrible for another job. By that I mean that if you want a knife that you're going to baton with, and sort of a camp knife, something that's heavy duty, you need something that's very, very robust, something that's got 3/16. Some people even have as much as a 1/4 inch blade, and something just died. Okay, I think I've got a problem here, maybe a battery issue. So we've covered the full tang knife. I think also, in addition to that, a saw is always a handy thing. There's a lot of things that you can do with a saw that are less, perhaps dangerous and somewhat less awkward than you would do with a knife. Where I live here, an axe, I carry a small, like a forest axe all the time, and I grew up, and that's a traditional type of thing to carry in this area. So that's one of the reasons. Honestly, when you get used to it, as I've carried it, like I said, all my life, there's almost nothing I can't do with an axe that I could do with a knife. And it may be a little more awkward in some instances, but it's even, for cleaning a fish or skinning an animal or whatever, a sharp axe is still a sharp blade. And there are a lot of things an axe can do, like felling a large tree if necessary, that you couldn't do with a knife, or at least certainly not very effectively. However, if you live in an area where it's more jungle-like or whatever, you may decide that a machete is more appropriate. I think a folding shovel in a lot of instances could be a really good thing to have. You may need to dig a little bit in order to get water that's just below the surface. There's any number of things that you could probably benefit from having a shovel for. A small folding shovel, they're not very heavy, and you may or may not need it, but it's a handy thing to have. And I think the final thing in that category would be a sharpening stone of some description, because we've got to remember, this is kind of a long-term setup. We're not talking about going out for a week or whatever. We're talking about possibly being out there for, weeks, perhaps months, maybe even longer. So always something like that is always a good thing. So I'm going to give 4 points to that one, because I think the knife and the saw are pretty critical. The sharpening stone is a great idea, and then a shovel or an axe or machete, something like that, is also good. So 4 points for that one. Next, we'll touch quickly on travel. There's not too much I can say about travel other than if you go out without a compass, you're taking a big chance. Don't rely on electronics. Batteries run out. If it does happen to be some kind of world crisis, there may not even be a satellite signal that you can get. So rely on your compass and a topographical map. Any map you can get is better than none. Topographical maps are the best. they tell you a lot. 2 points, one for each of those. Safety. I think even if you're in a sort of a stealth situation, which if it's a shit hits the fan situation, and you're into a sort of a stealth mode sort of thing, a whistle is still a handy thing to have. You may choose not to use it, probably, but you know, if you fall down a cliff and break a leg and you're stuck down there by yourself and nobody knows where you are, you know, it might still be a really good thing to have. Pepper spray, we call it bear spray here. That's a great thing. It works on anything, any animal. It doesn't have to be bears. Anything with 4 legs or 2 is a real handy thing to have. Again, if it's in a difficult situation where there's possibly somebody who might want to take your things from you. Safety glasses. I very rarely hear people talk very much about safety glasses, and if you shouldn't be walking around at night, but if for some reason you're forced to move during the night for some issue that's come up, the last thing you need again is a poke in the eye. So safety glasses during the day, they're a handy thing to have too. Safety glasses are a great thing to have. I think that's a necessity. And leather gloves. Leather gloves protect you from thorns. They protect you from something that's hot that you may need to pick up, or extremely cold for that matter. Leather gloves are just a real good thing to have. There's 100 times you're going to use them, and they don't take up much space and they don't take up much weight. So for safety, I think all of those items are necessary, so I'm going to make 4 points on that one. As far as light goes, you want to try to learn to work during natural hours, because almost any source of light requires some kind of an energy that may not be renewable. A flashlight, probably a headlamp, so you'll have hands free, is a handy thing to have. Mine is a crank light. I've had it for 15 years and it still works. It was like 12 bucks. I'm surprised that it still works, but it was really good, and it's still working, so that's great. And I would carry several 9-hour candles. They provide some light, they can provide some warmth. If you're tucked away inside that shelter where we were talking about, where you're maybe just wrapped inside your tarp and you don't have a fire going, if you can light your candle and wrap yourself around and huddle over that candle, you know, it's amazing how much warmth that little thing will help. It helps keep the air less damp, and that makes a big difference. And the last thing I'm going to talk about today, because this is getting to be an extremely long video, is a sewing kit. Now, I think a sewing kit is a very important thing to have. You have to maintain the clothes you've got. In a world crisis situation or a country crisis situation, you may not just be able to go and get another pair of clothes. You can't just go shopping in most of those situations. So I think you should have a needle and a thread and anything else that you can have. I also have one of those speedy stitchers. That's a great thing to have, and it works on much heavier materials, and it comes, and you want to make sure you've stocked up on some of that very heavy waxed nylon thread that they come with. I think in addition to that, a sail needle, a heavy canvas type stitching needle, even if you don't have that speedy stitcher, or even if you do, a heavy duty sail needle type needle, which is sort of a triangular shape, is also a very important thing to have. You have to maintain your gear, and your gear isn't limited just to darning your socks or something. It's, you know, your pack and your you know, anything else that might get torn or ripped. You know, you have to be able to maintain these things. So I think I'm going to leave it at that for today. 1 point for your sewing kit. It includes everything that's in there. I don't know if I mentioned it, but there was 2 points for the lights. I've got a couple of other, well, okay, let's carry, look, there's just a little bit more to do, so let's carry on with this. For your personal things, I'm going to divide that into 3 quick categories. We'll go through this real fast. The first one would be your personal, which would be in terms of medical. You want a trauma kit. The major things that are going to go wrong that are serious are cuts, burns, and breaks. The other one would be not breathing. If you happen to be alone, there's really not much you can do about that, because you're the one that's not breathing. If there's somebody else with you, then you know, hopefully they'll be able to help take care of this. You need to learn how to do all these things too. Don't just carry this stuff. You have to learn how to work it, how to use it. So with your medical, your trauma kit, you need to have something like a tourniquet, and you need to have the appropriate bandaging and so on that would go with that. I'm not going to list every single item in that type of a kit. There's 100 places on the website where you can either buy one or get lists or talk to your pharmacist or your doctor. Finding out what you should carry is not a problem. So a good emergency medical kit for basically a trauma kit. 3 points for that, and by all means know how to use the items that are in that kit. The next thing would be basically a first aid kit. In your first aid kit, you want to have, if you have any personal medical prescriptions that you have to take, medications, you should have as much of a supply of that as you can get. Certainly things like aspirins or Tylenols or whatever for just general use should be available in that kit. Antihistamines, especially for people who have allergies to bee stings or something. In fact, you might almost want to have one of those EpiPens or maybe several of them or whatever if you have a real bad, serious allergy to that. That can be pretty bad. Sunscreen of some description. It's especially for the people that live in hotter climates. I know you may be acclimatized to that, but anybody can get a burn. Bug dope. Carry some bug dope around. Even though you have your net and so on, it always helps to have a little bit of bug dope. So, really what we're talking about here is your basic boo-boo kit. You're having tweezers and fingernail clippers and all that kind of stuff that you want to have for minor work. And you should always have a mirror. In addition to its ability to signal, if you get something in your eye or anywhere in your face where you can't see it, and there's nobody there to help you, you need to be able to see what's happened, assess the damage, and do your best to be able to rectify that. So a mirror is always a great thing to have. 6 points for that, because there's a lot of little bits and pieces that get involved in there. So think it through. Make sure you've got all the right bits and pieces that suit your needs, and have them available, and have as good a supply as possible. The last part of that is hygiene, and you should have hygiene is very important. You should always have soap with you that's not scented. Scented soap attracts bugs and mosquitoes and bees and everything else, so you don't need that. But you should have that. You need whatever your dental care is, whatever type of toothbrush and toothpaste that you use, hairbrush. I'm going to mention the mirror again because it's an important factor. You should have 3 washcloths at least, and I kind of like the microfiber ones, but whatever you want to have, make sure you've got at least 2 or 3 of them. You want to have something, if you're not going to be able to have toilet paper, then, and personally I find that it's bulky, it's not heavy, but it's bulky and it doesn't last very long. I would prefer to have a dedicated cloth of some sort for that function, to be washed out and reused in the future, and you want to have a dedicated cloth for that issue. So that's the way I usually handle it, and it's easy to carry. Even if you can't wash it immediately, you can put it in a Ziploc bag until you can, whatever the case may be, but have something to deal with that. One of those bottles of hand sanitizer, that's a great thing to have. There are times when you may need to wash your hands or cleanse your hands if you want to eat something, or if you've handled an animal or something like that, and maybe you're not where there's an abundance of water where you can soap up and do a good job. At least use hand sanitizer and have a good supply of that around. And then any other personal needs that you may have. Women, of course, will have other needs, so make sure that you have those things taken care of in your kit. So the last thing, 3 points for that, for the hygiene, 3 points. The last thing I'm going to give 10 points for, and it's one word: skills. Make sure that you have the skills to use each and every single item that you have in all the previous lists that we've been making here. Don't wait till you're out there in an emergency situation to find out that you're not really sure how to work this thing. I've seen actually people go on some of these videos where they'll get out to their campsite and they pull something out and they start to pull it out of the package. It's never even been out of the package. Now, maybe it's your 4th one and you've worn the other ones out, you know what to do with it. But generally speaking, that's not the case. Don't do that. That's just looking for trouble. Know how to work all these things. Know some medical information. Part of your medical kit should be one of those books you can get from Red Cross or any other places that give you all kinds of information, some very detailed information about how to handle tourniquets and everything from burns and scrapes to major setting a bone and so on. Have that stuff available, read through it, understand it, and be prepared. So that takes us up to 50 points if my math is correct. And if you scored 50 points, obviously you got it covered, you know, and you may have even hypothetically more points, even though we didn't allow extra points for extra items in any category. If you've got more than those minimum 3, 5, 4 points, whatever it is, that's so much the better. And don't worry about weight, folks. Don't worry about weight. If this is an emergency situation where you may not be coming back, or you may not be coming back for a very long time, you won't have the opportunity to resupply. Take everything that you need in as big an abundance as you can acquire it. I don't care if my pack weighs 200 pounds. I'll drag it with me. You know those little plastic sleighs that you get, the Pelican, I think they're one of the brand names. I wasn't going to mention brands, but it's the only way I could think of to describe it. They slide really well, obviously, on the snow. They slide pretty darn good on the grass as well. Get one of those things. If you have nothing else, get a wheelbarrow, anything, but make sure you've got these materials with you. So the way I would look at this, if you scored 30 points or less, you really need to reevaluate your kit, go back and see what you don't have there, give it some more thought, and try and build it up a little bit, because you know you're going to be missing some key pieces there that in the wrong situation could cause you you know, a lot of grief. So reevaluate your kit and try and upgrade it a little bit. If you've scored 36 points, say up to say 40 points roughly, you've got a real good selection of items there. Maybe not everything that you could have, but you've done a good job. You're going to make it. You know, you've got the necessities, but again, you know, 101% is where you know we want to be. So try and just go back through it. Maybe just make sure that everything in there is fresh. Nothing is past. You know, when you talk about water purification tablets and things like that, you want to make sure that any of these types of things you're carrying are have an expiry date. Make sure that they're not expired. Try and get something that's got the longest time frame left on it that you can get. A lot of these things you can use past their expiry date, but they diminish in their capabilities. So, you know, make sure that what you've got is fresh, clean, still sealed properly. And if you've scored over 40 points, over 42 points, you got it. You know, you're right up there. You're doing pretty good. I always believe that no matter how, nothing is ever perfect. There's always room for improvement. But if you've got 40, 45 points out of this, you've pretty much thought yourself out pretty well, and maybe just a little tweak here and there. So I want to thank you for joining me. It's been a long video. I know we're probably at the half-hour mark or so. I apologize for that, but I honestly think that, you know, this type of thing is important, and I don't think that we can understand how important it is until we're in a situation where we need something, and even worse than that, when we're in a situation where we need something we don't have, or we don't know how to use, or that we just ran out of, or whatever the case may be. That's not the time to find out that kind of news. So anyways, as I was saying, thank you for watching. I appreciate it for those who have stuck with me until the end of this. If you know anybody else who's interested in any types of these things that we discuss here, please share it with them, and throw a like on there and subscribe if you haven't already. The next phase of this will be basically covering tools and so on, but this has already gone on long enough, and tools to me and food is a big part of this as well, and I'm going to go into quite a bit of detail with that. So let's just leave it at that for today. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one.